The waitress carried a stranger's groceries. Hours later, her life changed forever. Sometimes the smallest decision you make on an ordinary day becomes the moment that quietly changes everything. The rain had started just before 5 o'clock. Not a storm, just a steady cold drizzle that painted the sidewalk silver and sent most people hurrying toward their cars. Emma Carter pulled her thin jacket tighter as she stepped out of the diner after finishing another exhausting shift. Her feet hurt, her shoulders ached, and the folded hospital bill sitting inside her purse felt heavier than anything she was carrying. She had worked 10 hours that day. Tomorrow she would do it again. Her mother's treatment was expensive. Rent was due next week. And despite all her effort, the numbers never seemed to work in her favor. Emma checked her phone. 3 missed calls from the pharmacy. Another reminder about an overdue payment. She closed her eyes for a second and took a slow breath. Then she started walking toward the bus stop. People passed her without looking. Businessmen, students, shoppers carrying umbrellas. Everyone focused on their own problems. Then she noticed an older man standing near the curb outside a grocery store. One of his paper bags suddenly split open. Cans rolled across the wet sidewalk. A carton of eggs tipped dangerously close to a puddle. A bag of apples scattered in every direction. The man bent down quickly, trying to gather everything before traffic and pedestrians made things worse. Nobody stopped. A few people glanced over. Most kept walking. Emma hesitated for less than a second. Then she hurried across the street. "I have got them," she said, kneeling beside the rolling cans before they reached the gutter. The older man looked surprised. "Thank you," he said. His voice was calm, gentle. Emma collected the apples and handed them back to him. Rain dotted her hair and sleeves. Within moments, she was helping reorganize the groceries into the remaining bags. "You do not have to do this," the man said. Emma smiled. "Looks like somebody should." The man studied her face for a moment. Not the way strangers usually looked at people. More carefully, more thoughtfully. When everything was packed again, Emma expected to say goodbye. Instead, she noticed how many bags remained. At least 6. Heavy ones. The man's hands trembled slightly as he lifted them. Without thinking, she reached for 2. "Which way are you headed?" she asked. "A few blocks," he replied. "That is all." Emma nodded. "Then I am walking with you." The man seemed ready to protest, but she had already picked up the groceries. Together they started down the rain-soaked sidewalk beneath the gray evening sky. Neither of them knew it yet, but that simple walk through the rain was already setting something extraordinary in motion. The walk took longer than Emma expected. The rain continued falling in a soft, steady rhythm, tapping against parked cars and dark sidewalks. She carried 2 heavy grocery bags while the older man carried the rest. For a few minutes neither of them spoke. The city seemed quieter than usual. The rush of traffic felt distant. Emma was grateful for that. Silence was easier than thinking about bills. Easier than wondering how she would pay for her mother's next treatment. "Long day?" the man finally asked. Emma laughed softly. "You could say that." He glanced toward her. "Restaurant work?" She nodded. "Diner on Maple Street." "Busy place." Emma looked surprised. "You know it." "I know good coffee," he said with a faint smile. That made her laugh again. The conversation remained simple after that. Comfortable. The kind strangers sometimes share when neither expects to see the other again. After several blocks, they reached an older apartment building tucked between 2 brick storefronts. It was clean but modest. Nothing about it seemed unusual. Emma followed him inside and carried the bags up a short flight of stairs. When he opened the apartment door, she immediately noticed something strange. The furniture was simple. The walls were plain. Yet scattered throughout the room were details that did not fit. A framed photograph showed the older man standing beside a state governor. Another picture displayed him shaking hands with someone Emma recognized from television. On a bookshelf sat several awards made of crystal and polished metal. She did not stare. She was not that kind of person. But she noticed. Most waitresses became experts at noticing things. The man set his groceries on the kitchen counter. "Thank you," he said sincerely. Most people would have kept walking. Emma shrugged. Most people were probably in a hurry. And you were not. The question lingered in the air. Emma smiled. "I was. I still am." For the first time, the man's expression became thoughtful, as if he were trying to understand something. Then why stop? Emma looked toward the rain-speckled window. The answer felt obvious to her. Because somebody should. The room grew quiet. Not uncomfortable. Just reflective. The older man nodded slowly. He seemed to absorb every word. Then he reached for his wallet. Emma immediately raised a hand. No. Please. No, she repeated gently. You do not owe me anything. He looked genuinely surprised. You carried groceries through the rain. Emma picked up her jacket. And now they are home. The man studied her face for another moment before putting the wallet away. At least tell me your name. Emma Carter. He smiled. I am William. Emma nodded. Nice meeting you, William. As she turned toward the door, she noticed him glance at the hospital bill sticking slightly out of her purse. Just for a second. She quickly adjusted the zipper and thought nothing of it. Everyone had private problems. She certainly did. A few moments later, she stepped back into the rain and started walking home. Behind her, William remained standing near the window, watching her disappear down the street. And for reasons he could not fully explain, he found himself thinking about the young waitress long after she was gone. Emma's apartment was on the third floor of an aging building across town. By the time she reached it, the rain had become little more than a mist. She unlocked the door quietly and stepped inside. The familiar scent of soup and medicine greeted her immediately. A lamp glowed softly in the corner of the living room. Her mother was asleep in a recliner beneath a folded blanket. The television played at low volume. Emma smiled. Seeing her resting peacefully always made the long days feel a little lighter. She removed her damp jacket and set her purse on the kitchen counter. The hospital bill slipped out slightly again. Emma stared at it for a moment before placing it inside a drawer. She already knew every number on that page. She did not need another reminder. The kitchen clock read 6:43. In less than 12 hours, she would be back at the diner. Another shift. Another stack of orders. Another day trying to stay ahead of expenses that never seemed to stop growing. She prepared tea for her mother and sat at the small table near the window. Outside, streetlights reflected across wet pavement. Inside, everything felt quiet. Ordinary. Emma preferred ordinary. She had never dreamed about luxury or fame. She only wanted stability. Enough money to pay the bills. Enough time to breathe. Enough health for her mother to enjoy life again. Her phone buzzed. A message from a coworker asking if she could cover part of a weekend shift. Emma sighed. She was already exhausted. Yet she typed the same answer she almost always did. Sure. No problem. After sending the message, she laughed softly at herself. People often wondered why she helped everyone. The truth was simple. Life had been difficult enough to teach her how much small acts of kindness mattered. Years earlier, when her father passed away unexpectedly, strangers had helped her family through the hardest months. Neighbors brought food. Friends covered expenses. Teachers stayed late to help her finish school assignments. Emma never forgot that. Kindness had carried her through dark seasons. Maybe that was why she found it impossible to walk past someone who needed help. Across the city, William Harrison sat alone in his apartment looking at a notepad resting beside his chair. Written on it were only 2 words. Emma Carter. He rarely forgot people, but something about the young waitress stayed with him. It was not the groceries. It was not the rain. It was the answer she had given so casually. Because somebody should. Most people spoke about kindness when life was easy. Emma practiced it when life was difficult. William picked up his phone and made a brief call. The conversation lasted less than a minute. When it ended, he looked once more toward the rain-covered window. Meanwhile, Emma finished her tea, checked on her sleeping mother, and prepared for another ordinary evening. She had no idea that somewhere across the city, events were already moving quietly in a direction that would soon change the course of her future. The next morning began before sunrise. Emma woke to the familiar sound of her alarm and the weight of responsibilities waiting for her. She moved quietly through the apartment, preparing breakfast and medication for her mother before leaving for work. Outside, the rain had disappeared, but gray clouds still lingered over the city. The diner was already busy when she arrived. Coffee machines hissed. Plates clattered. Customers filled nearly every booth. Emma tied on her apron, tucked a loose strand of blonde hair behind her ear, and started another shift. Hours passed in a blur of refills, orders, and polite smiles. She barely had time to think. That was one reason she liked working. When she stayed busy, there was less room to worry. Around noon, while carrying a tray of drinks toward a corner table, she noticed a familiar face sitting near the front window. William. The older man looked up from his coffee and offered a small wave. Emma smiled, surprised. Back for the famous coffee? She asked as she approached. I told you I knew where to find good coffee, he replied. His eyes seemed brighter than the day before, more energetic. They spoke for only a minute before another customer called for assistance. Emma returned to work without giving the encounter much thought. She assumed he had simply stopped by for lunch. What she did not notice was that William spent most of his visit quietly observing. He watched the way she treated every customer with patience. He noticed how she carried extra napkins to an elderly couple before they asked. He noticed her helping a young mother fold a stroller near the entrance. Most importantly, he noticed that none of it appeared forced. Kindness seemed as natural to Emma as breathing. Later that afternoon, after paying for his meal, William left a generous tip beneath the receipt. Emma tried to return part of it when she saw the amount. He refused with a smile and walked out the door before she could argue. The rest of the day passed normally, or at least it seemed normal. Across the city, William sat inside a private office located at the top of a modern glass tower. The contrast between the office and his modest apartment was striking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked miles of skyline. Assistants moved through hallways carrying reports and schedules. On the wall hung awards worth more than most people earned in years. William listened carefully as a trusted associate reviewed information gathered that morning. Emma Carter, 26 years old. Waitress. No criminal record. No financial advantages. Caring for her mother. Working extra shifts whenever possible. William looked out the window for a long moment. Success had introduced him to thousands of people over the years. Ambitious people, talented people, wealthy people. Yet genuine kindness remained surprisingly rare. He glanced toward the note still resting on his desk. Her name was written there exactly as before. Emma Carter. Then he made another decision. One that would set the next stage of events into motion. Meanwhile, miles away, Emma finished her shift, completely unaware that her ordinary act of helping a stranger was continuing to open doors she could not yet see. That evening, Emma expected nothing unusual. She left the diner shortly after 6 o'clock, picked up a prescription refill for her mother, and walked the familiar route home. The air felt cooler than the previous day. The city moved at its normal pace. Cars passed. Store signs flickered to life. People hurried toward dinners, appointments, and evening plans. Emma carried a small paper bag from the pharmacy and mentally reviewed her budget for the rest of the month. The numbers still did not work. They never seemed to. When she reached her apartment building, she climbed the stairs and unlocked the door. Her mother was awake this time, sitting by the window with a blanket across her lap. "Long day?" her mother asked. Emma smiled. "The usual." She prepared dinner while sharing stories from the diner. Neither of them mentioned the bills. Both knew they were there. Neither wanted to ruin the evening. For a little while, everything felt peaceful. Then, shortly after 8 o'clock, a sound echoed from outside the building. An engine, not unusual by itself, but different somehow. Emma glanced through the window. A long black luxury sedan had stopped directly in front of the apartment. She immediately assumed it belonged to someone else. People like that did not visit buildings like hers. Yet a minute later, someone knocked on the door. 3 calm, deliberate knocks. Emma exchanged a puzzled look with her mother and walked to the entrance. Standing outside was a professionally dressed woman carrying a leather folder. "Emma Carter?" she asked politely. Emma nodded. "Yes." The woman smiled. "Good evening. I apologize for arriving unannounced." Emma felt confused. "Can I help you?" The woman handed her a sealed envelope. Thick cream-colored paper. Expensive. Formal. Mr. William Harrison requested that this be delivered personally. Emma blinked. The name sounded familiar for a second. Then she remembered. The groceries. The rain. The apartment. "William?" she asked. "The gentleman you assisted yesterday," the woman replied. Emma looked down at the envelope. Her pulse quickened slightly. "What is this?" The woman smiled again. "An invitation. Nothing more. Nothing less." Emma carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a card embossed with elegant silver lettering. It invited her to attend a private meeting the following morning at 10 o'clock. The location was an address downtown she did not recognize. Beneath the address was a short handwritten note. "Thank you for your kindness. I hope you will join me. William Harrison." Emma read it twice. Then a third time. "There must be some mistake," she said quietly. The woman shook her head. "There is no mistake." Before Emma could ask another question, the woman politely wished her a pleasant evening and returned to the waiting car. Moments later, the sedan disappeared down the street. Emma remained standing in the doorway holding the invitation. Her mother looked at her curiously. Who was that? Emma stared at the card again. The elegant lettering. The unfamiliar address. The name she barely knew. Honestly, she said, I have no idea. But deep down, she was beginning to realize that the stranger she helped in the rain might not have been a stranger at all. Emma barely slept that night. The invitation remained on the kitchen table long after she should have gone to bed. Every time she walked past it, she found herself reading the address again. Downtown, a district filled with corporate headquarters, luxury hotels, and buildings she normally only saw from a distance. Nothing about it made sense. William seemed kind, thoughtful, but he had also seemed like an ordinary retiree carrying groceries through the rain. The black sedan suggested otherwise. By morning, curiosity had replaced most of her uncertainty. After helping her mother with breakfast, Emma put on her best outfit. It was simple, a navy blouse, dark slacks, comfortable shoes. Nothing expensive, nothing remarkable, but it was the nicest clothing she owned. Her mother smiled as Emma prepared to leave. You look nervous. Emma laughed softly. That obvious? Very. Her mother reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Whatever this is, just be yourself. Those words stayed with Emma during the bus ride downtown. She repeated them silently while watching the city pass outside the window. Be yourself. The address eventually brought her to a towering glass building that seemed to touch the clouds. People in tailored suits moved through the entrance carrying briefcases and tablets. Luxury vehicles lined the curb. Emma stopped for a moment and checked the address again. It was correct. Her stomach tightened. A uniformed receptionist greeted her inside the lobby. The marble floors gleamed beneath enormous chandeliers. Fresh flowers decorated every corner. Everything felt polished and impossibly expensive. Emma Carter, the receptionist asked. Emma nodded. Mr. Harrison is expecting you. The statement surprised her. Not because of the words. Because of how naturally they were spoken. As if this happened every day. Moments later, she was escorted into a private elevator. The ride felt strangely quiet. Floor numbers climbed higher and higher. When the doors finally opened, Emma stepped into a spacious executive floor overlooking nearly the entire city. Sunlight poured through walls of glass. Modern artwork decorated the hallways. Assistants moved efficiently between offices. Then Emma noticed something that made her stop walking. A large framed photograph hung on the wall ahead. The man in the picture was smiling beside several national business leaders. Emma recognized him immediately. William. Her pulse quickened. She continued forward and discovered more photographs. More awards. More articles framed behind glass. Every one of them featured the same man she had helped carry groceries less than 48 hours earlier. The realization arrived slowly. Then all at once. William Harrison was not an ordinary retiree. He was one of the most respected business leaders in the state. Perhaps in the entire region. Emma stared at a magazine cover displaying his face above a headline about innovation and leadership. She remembered the modest apartment. The old jacket. The grocery bags. None of it matched. Before she could fully process what she was seeing, a familiar voice spoke from behind her. I was beginning to worry you might not come. Emma turned. William stood there smiling warmly. The same gentle expression. The same calm eyes. Yet now the entire world around him looked different. And for the first time since meeting him, Emma realized she had no idea what was about to happen next. Emma stood motionless for a moment, trying to reconcile the man she had met in the rain with the man whose achievements covered the walls around her. William seemed to sense her confusion. I know, he said with a gentle smile. It looks a little different from the apartment. Emma laughed nervously. A little. That earned a genuine chuckle from him. The tension eased slightly. William led her toward a spacious office overlooking the city. The view stretched for miles in every direction. Sunlight reflected from glass buildings and busy streets below. Emma had never seen the city from this height before. It felt like standing above an entirely different world. They sat across from each other at a polished conference table. For a moment, neither spoke. Then William folded his hands and looked at her with the same thoughtful expression she remembered from the grocery store. Do you know why I invited you here? Emma shook her head. Not really. William nodded as though he expected that answer. Most people who recognize me treat me differently. Emma glanced at the photographs on the wall. I can imagine. They want something. He said it without bitterness. Just honesty. A business opportunity. A favor. An introduction. Advice. Money. Emma lowered her eyes briefly. I did not know who you were. Exactly. William smiled. That is what interested me. Silence settled between them. Not awkward. Reflective. Outside the windows, helicopters moved slowly across the skyline. Inside, Emma felt as though she were participating in a conversation she never expected to have. William opened a folder resting beside him. After we met, I asked my team to learn more about you. Emma stiffened slightly. William noticed immediately. Nothing invasive, he assured her. Only enough to understand who helped me that day. Emma relaxed. William continued. They told me about your mother. Emma nodded quietly. They told me about the extra shifts. Another nod. And they told me that despite everything, you still spend your time helping other people. Emma looked down at her hands. She did not know what to say. To her, none of those things felt extraordinary. They were simply part of life. William seemed to understand that too. That is the problem, he said. People like you never realize how rare you are. Emma looked up. William stood and walked toward the window. I built companies for 40 years, he said. I learned how to identify talent. But character is much harder to find. He turned back toward her. You cannot teach integrity. You cannot teach kindness. And you certainly cannot teach someone to do the right thing when nobody is watching. Emma felt emotion rising unexpectedly in her chest. Not because of the praise. Because no one had ever described her that way before. She was a waitress. A daughter. A woman trying to pay bills. Nothing more. At least that was how she saw herself. William returned to the table and slid a single envelope toward her. Before I explain everything, he said softly, there is something I want you to see. Emma looked at the envelope resting between them. Thick. Sealed. Important. And suddenly she realized that whatever was inside was about to change the direction of her life. Emma looked at the envelope for several seconds before opening it. The paper felt heavier than ordinary paper. Important somehow. She carefully broke the seal and removed the documents inside. At first, she did not understand what she was looking at. There were several pages. Official letterhead. Program descriptions. Educational opportunities. Professional training information. Then her eyes stopped on a single paragraph near the center of the first page. William watched quietly as she read. The color slowly faded from her face. This cannot be real, she whispered. William smiled gently. It is real. Emma looked up. You are offering me a scholarship? William nodded. A full scholarship. She stared at the page again. Tuition. Books. Professional development. Transportation assistance. Everything covered. The program partnered with one of the most respected business schools in the region. Emma had heard of it before. Years ago, she had dreamed of attending college full-time. Life had simply moved in another direction. Bills arrived. Responsibilities grew. Dreams became luxuries she could no longer afford. I do not understand, she said softly. William folded his hands. I am not giving you money because you helped me. Emma listened carefully. Then why? William looked toward the skyline outside the windows. Because I believe opportunity should find good people more often than it does. The room grew quiet. Emma felt her throat tighten. Nobody had ever spoken to her that way. Not employers. Not teachers. Not strangers. William continued. The day you helped me, you were tired. Worried. Carrying problems of your own. He paused. You still stopped. Emma remembered the ring. The broken grocery bag. The scattered apples rolling across the sidewalk. At the time, it had felt like nothing. Just a few minutes in an ordinary day. William smiled. Character reveals itself during inconvenient moments. Those words settled deeply inside her. He opened another folder. There is more. Emma blinked. More? William slid a second document across the table. It outlined a paid internship within one of his companies. Flexible hours. Professional mentoring. Real experience. A path toward a future she had never believed was possible. You would earn while you learn, William explained. You would not have to choose between helping your mother and building a career. Emma lowered her eyes. Emotion threatened to overwhelm her. She thought about the late nights, the double shifts, the hospital bills hidden in kitchen drawers. She thought about every time she told herself that surviving was enough because hoping for more felt dangerous. William allowed the silence to breathe. He understood that life-changing moments rarely arrive with fireworks. Sometimes they arrive quietly across a conference table. Why me? Emma finally asked. William's answer came immediately. Because when nobody was watching, you chose kindness anyway. Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled through them. Outside the windows, sunlight reflected across the city below. Inside, something much more important was happening. For the first time in years, Emma could see a future that stretched beyond the next bill, the next shift, and the next difficult month. And she realized that the greatest gift William had given her was not financial help. It was permission to believe that her life could become bigger than the struggles that had defined it for so long. Emma left the building nearly an hour later, carrying the folder carefully against her chest. The city looked different now. The streets were the same. The traffic was the same. The people rushing past were the same. Yet something inside her had changed. For years, she had measured life one bill at a time, one shift at a time, one difficult month at a time. Now, for the first time in a very long while, she found herself thinking beyond survival. She found herself thinking about possibility. During the bus ride home, she looked through the scholarship documents again. Then she looked through them a second time. Every page felt unreal. Every opportunity seemed too large to belong to someone like her. By the time she reached her apartment building, she was smiling. A genuine smile. The kind that comes from hope rather than relief. Her mother was waiting by the window when she walked through the door. One look at Emma's face was enough. "Something happened," her mother said. Emma nodded. Then she sat beside her and told her everything. The groceries, the invitation, the office, the scholarship, the internship, every detail. Her mother listened quietly. At one point, tears filled her eyes. At another point, she simply laughed in disbelief. When Emma finally finished, the room became still. Neither spoke for several seconds. Then her mother reached over and squeezed her hand. "I am proud of you." Emma swallowed hard. "For carrying groceries?" Her mother smiled. "No, for being the kind of person who would." The words stayed with her. Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. Emma accepted the opportunity. She continued helping at the diner while beginning her studies and training program. The schedule was exhausting, but it felt different from the exhaustion she had known before. This exhaustion carried purpose. William remained a mentor throughout the process. He never treated her like a charity project. He treated her like someone capable of building a future. And slowly, Emma began believing it too. One afternoon, nearly a year after that rainy evening, Emma found herself walking through the lobby of the same glass tower where everything had changed. She was there for a meeting, not as a visitor, not as a waitress delivering coffee, as a young professional with her own responsibilities, her own goals, and her own future. As she crossed the lobby, she noticed an elderly woman struggling with several grocery bags near the entrance. One bag slipped. A carton rolled across the floor. People walked past without noticing. Emma smiled. Then she immediately bent down to help. The woman thanked her. Emma simply said, "Looks like somebody should." For a moment, she remembered the ring, the sidewalk, the stranger carrying groceries, the decision that seemed so small at the time. Life rarely announces its turning points when they arrive. Sometimes they appear disguised as ordinary moments. A helping hand, a kind word, a choice nobody else notices. Emma once thought she carried a stranger's groceries home through the rain. What she really carried was a future she could not yet see. And in the end, the thing that changed her life was not wealth, opportunity, or success. It was the simple decision to remain kind when the world gave her every reason not to be.